A protective shield. You must have heard of the ozone layer in our atmosphere. It protects us from the harmful ultraviolet radiation which comes from the sun. Ozone absorbs this radiation and breaks down up into oxygen. Oxygen is different from ozone. Can be called the breaking down of ozone is a chemical change. If ultraviolet radiations were not absorbed by the ozone, it would reach the Earth's surface and cause harm to us and other life forms. Ozone acts as a natural sheet against the radiation. You all might have heard about the black hole that is there in the atmosphere. जो ओजोन का लेयर है एटमॉस्फेयर में उसके अंदर एक होल हो गया है which is called as a black hole. Why that hole has happened? Just because too much of pollution is there in the air, and that polluted air goes up high in the atmosphere and started creating a hole in the atmosphere ozone layer. Now you all have heard of ozone layer also, which protects us from the ultraviolet rays reaching the earth. If the ozone layer in the atmosphere is not there, then those ultraviolet radiations would directly come to the earth, and ultraviolet radiations are very harmful for us. But now that layer has started depleting because of our carelessness. We are creating so much of pollution in the air that the ozone layer has started depleting, and the hole is getting bigger and bigger day by day. That is why we are feeling so much of heat during the summer, and even in the winter season we don't feel that much of cold as it should be. This is just because of those ultraviolet radiations which have started reaching our earth and which is harming us. ये जो वेदर में चेंज हम देखते हैं उसका कारण ये है कि बहुत ज़्यादा गर्मी क्यों पड़ती है, क्योंकि जो डायरेक्ट रेडिएशन जो सन से है वो सीधा अर्थ पे आते हैं. अगर वो अल्ट्रावायलेट ओजोन लेयर कंप्लीट होती, अगर उसमें कोई भी होल नहीं होता, तो वो सारा जो अल्ट्रावायलेट रेज है वो ओजोन लेयर अब्जॉर्ब करता है और ऑक्सीजन भी रिलीज करता है साथ में. तो हमारे लिए ऑक्सीजन जो है, जो अभी हम शायद एट सर्टन प्लेसेस वी फील दैट ऑक्सीजन इज लेस, सो दैट वुड नॉट हैव हैपेंड. So we now it's high time that we should wake up and stop polluting our air. Now if we move on to the next activity. Now we learned in chapter 1 that plants produce their food by the process called photosynthesis. Can we call photosynthesis a chemical change? Yes, we can call photosynthesis a chemical change, because photosynthesis, in the process of photosynthesis, a new product that is food for the plants is formed. So photosynthesis is a chemical change. Now next is your next activity. Now next is your activity 6.8, which is rusting of iron, which is again new topic. As I explained earlier, that when iron is kept in open, it absorbs a little bit of moisture, and then a layer, brownish layer, is formed on the top of the iron, and this whole process of the layer which gets deposited on the iron is called as the rusting of iron. Let us get back to the rusting. This is one change that affects iron articles and slowly destroys them. Since iron is used in making bridges, shapes, cars, truck bodies, and many other articles, the monetary loss due to rusting is very huge. The process of rusting can be represented by the following equation. Iron, that is Fe. The chemical name of iron is ferrous. So ferrous का short form लिखते हैं Fe, plus oxygen, that is O2 from the air or the atmosphere, plus water. The chemical formula for water is H2O, and that is rust, that is iron oxide or the ferrous oxide. Fe2O3, that means it is called as iron oxide, और इसको हम ferrous oxide भी chemical name में हम बोलते हैं ferrous oxide. Fe is the ferrous, which is the chemical name of iron. Now see, rusting of iron. Iron is used in many things that we use, like buses, cars, trucks. बहुत सारे ships होते हैं, हाउसेज, बिल्डिंग्स बनाने के लिए आयरन के रॉड्स यूज़ किए जाते हैं. तो मैनी ब्रिजेस बनाने के लिए तो बहुत सारी जगह आयरन का इस्तेमाल होता है. एंड अगर आयरन विल स्टार्ट रस्टिंग, देन दीज थिंग्स विल नॉट सर्वाइव फॉर द लॉन्ग. वंस द रस्टिंग ऑफ आयरन टेक्स प्लेस, then the life of that iron object becomes very less and slowly it breaks. तो आयरन की लाइफ जो रस्टिंग होती है वो जो है उसकी लाइफ कम कर देती है. और अगर ऐसे रस्टिंग होती रही तो उससे जो है बहुत ज़्यादा नुकसान हो सकता है, क्योंकि बहुत सारी जो चीज़ें, जैसे आई जस्ट टोल्ड यू, लाइक कार, बसेस, ट्रक्स, ब्रिजेस एक्सेट्रा आर मेड विद द हेल्प ऑफ द आयरन. तो ऐसा होगा तो फिर वो सारी चीज़ें खराब हो जाएगी और ज़्यादा टाइम तक सर्वाइव नहीं कर पाएंगे. सो दिस रस्टिंग इज एक्सप्लेन्ड विद द हेल्प ऑफ अ केमिकल इक्वेशन, आयरन प्लस ऑक्सीजन plus water, that is rust iron oxide or ferrous oxide. For rusting, the process of both oxygen and water or the water vapor is essential. Now rusting takes place with the iron only when the iron come in contact with the oxygen as well as with the water or the water vapors. मतलब कि moisture that is present in the atmosphere combined with the oxygen and iron becomes iron oxide. In fact, if the content of the moisture in the air is high, which means that if it is more than humid, rusting becomes faster. And जैसे जैसे जो atmosphere में humidity or the content of moisture or the content water content increases, the rusting becomes very fast. So how do we prevent rusting? Prevent iron articles from coming in contact with the oxygen or water, both. Now we need to find out some way where we can prevent the rusting of iron. That means we need to find something by which the iron can be saved from rusting. One simple way is to apply a coat of paint or grease that we normally do, that we apply the paint on the iron article so that it does not get rusted or it does not come in direct contact with the oxygen and water. In fact, these coats should be applied regularly to prevent rusting. Another way is to deposit a layer of metal like chromium or zinc on iron. Now, one way is either you can grease it or color it, but then that you have to do it regularly. Once the color coat is removed, again the iron will come in contact with the atmospheric moisture, and again the rusting process will start. So the paint or the grease has to be done regularly so that the color or the paint that you apply or the grease that you apply does not get removed. And another method is to prevent the rusting is to put a layer of a zinc or chromium or zinc on the iron. कोई भी आयरन ऑब्जेक्ट होता है उसको प्रिवेंट करने के लिए आइदर वी कैन यूज अ जिंक और अ क्रोमियम टू अ लेयर ऑफ क्रोमियम मेटल. ये मेटल्स होते हैं जिंक और क्रोमियम है जिनका एक लेयर जो है आयरन के ऊपर अगर रख दे तो रस्टिंग नहीं होगा. Moving on to page number 64. Now this process of depositing the layer of zinc on iron is called as galvanization. This is the new word that you have heard, galvanization. Now this process of depositing the layer of zinc or chromium on the iron object is called as galvanization. The iron pipes we use in our homes to carry water are galvanized to prevent rusting. Now at many places nowadays PVC pipes are being used so that the iron pipes are not used, but in olden days for the water supply also iron pipes were used. And iron pipes, and you all know that if the water supply is done through that, that means that iron is always in continuously it is in contact with the water, so they can get rusted very easily, and in no time it will get rusted. So every now and then you need to change those iron pipes, but now we are using PVC pipes which cannot be, so there is no effect of that atmosphere on it except the heat of the sun. टू लॉन्ग इफ इट इज़ एक्सपोज टू द सन, बहुत समय तक अगर बहुत सालों तक ऐसी जगह पर हो जहाँ पर बहुत ज़्यादा धूप पड़ती है तो उस धूप का असर ज़रूर होता है उसके ऊपर, और कुछ समय बाद वो शायद उसमें क्रैक्स भी डेवलप हो सकते हैं. लेकिन कंपेयर टू द आयरन रॉड्स दीज आर दे हैव अ लॉन्गर लाइफ. You all know that the ships are made of iron and a part of them remains underwater. One on the part above the water also, water drops keep clinging to the sea's outer surface. Moreover, the water of the sea contains many salts. The salt water makes the process of rust formation faster. Therefore, ships suffer a lot of damage of rusting in spite of being painted. So much so that a fraction of ship's iron has to be replaced every year. Can you imagine the monetary loss to the world? Now here what are the disadvantages of rusting of iron that takes place even though the color is used or the coating or galvanization is done. But then too, like the ships which always remain in the water for the whole of the year or for its lifetime it remains in the water. So some part of the ship that is always under the water and the remaining part is above the water. But the part which is above the water also, you can see the water coming inside that part also. But the part which is under the water, there the damage is more because the rusting, because seawater is salty as you know, and with the salts there are certain minerals also which are present in the seawater which helps a faster rusting of iron, or they help in the rusting of that iron part of the ship which is immersed in the water. So every year the damage is to such an extent of the ships that every year that some part of the a ship has to be the which is made out of iron has to be replaced. Every year the new part has to be applied because of the rusting. It gets so much damage that you cannot use that for the ship to survive longer. So therefore the new metal was also developed, which is called as the stainless steel. Is made by mixing iron with carbon and metals like chromium, nickel and manganese. It does not rust. Now stainless steel, you all know the vessels or the utensils that we use at home are made out of steel, जिसको हम local language में हम steel के बर्तन बोलते हैं, that is stainless steel, which is basically made out of iron only. Majority part of the metal that is used is iron, but iron, along with the iron, it is mixed with carbon and the metals like chromium, nickel and manganese is used. So the iron does not get rusted. जो स्टील के बर्तन होते हैं उसके ऊपर रस्टिंग नहीं होता है, लेकिन आपने स्टील के बर्तन में भी, इफ़ यू हैव नोटिस्ड एट योर होम, देयर आर सर्टेन वेसल्स विच आर मेड आउट ऑफ गुड स्टील and there are certain vessels which are made out of not so good steel. When the vessels which are made out of not so good steel, that means in which the iron content is more, then you can see at certain parts you might have observed that they have turned out to be brown at to some areas or the nooks and the corners of that vessel. So that means that has started rusting. The process of rusting has started in it. That means the iron is more in that compared to that alloy that is being made, or the mixture of the iron, nickel, chromium, carbon and manganese that has to be made is not made in the proper proportion. The proportion of iron is more and all these substances is less. That is why that utensil has started rusting. So there's a huge loss. To curtail the loss, the stainless steel was invented, and it is very much popular nowadays also, and from long time the day it has come into the market or it has started being manufactured, people have been start using those utensils also. नहीं तो आयरन के बर्तन तो यूज़ करना इट्स नेक्स्ट टू इम्पॉसिबल, लेकिन जो कॉपर वेसल्स हैं वो भी हैं, उनको भी क्लीन करना एंड to use that copper vessels is also difficult in day to day life. So this is the easy option, that is stainless steel, which was invented so that everybody it's cheaper also, everybody can afford also, and it is easy to use also. Now next is your 6.4. It is written here, which is crystallization. This is also a new word for you, crystallization. In class 6, you have learnt about the salt that can be obtained by the evaporation of seawater. The salt obtained in this manner is not pure and the shape of its crystals cannot be seen clearly. However, large crystals of pure substances can be formed from their solutions. This process is called as crystallization. It is an example of a physical change. Now the crystallization, till now we read about the chemical changes. All these in the second part I explained all the experiments which related to the chemical change only. Now this crystallization is an example of a physical change. Now you all know that in the salt pan workers, in their they make the pans in the sand and they collect the seawater, and when the seawater dries up, evaporates, the salt remains on in the pans, and that salt is collected. The crystals of the salt are formed after the water of the sea gets evaporated. Now those crystals are not very clean, so you cannot see through it, but the crystals of the some salts, clear crystals of the some of the salts from their solution. If you have made the solution of from the crystal, and if you evaporate your solution, then you will get the clear crystals from that solution. अगर जो crystal है उसका पहले हमने solution बनाया है और उस solution में से वापस हमको crystals चाहिए, तो उस solution को हमको evaporate करना पड़ेगा, और evaporation के बाद जो crystals मिलेंगे that will be very clean and clear. Now this process of making finding the crystals of the salt is called as the crystallization. जो solution है उसका liquid जो होता है water है या कोई भी liquid जिसमें solution बना है, उसको evaporate करके हम वापस उस salt का crystal बना सकते हैं. So this is a physical change in which you will get back the original thing. Now this is activity 6.9. To to be performed in the presence of the teacher. Now this is an experiment that you have to do. Take a cup full of water in a beaker and add a few drops of dilute sulfuric acid. Now the sulfuric acid is little bit, you have to handle it carefully, because अगर ये आपके कपड़ों पे पड़ता है तो तुरंत छेद हो जाएगा, स्किन पे पड़ेगा तो स्किन जल जाएगी. Heat the water. When it starts boiling, add copper sulfate powder slowly while stirring continuously. Continue adding copper sulfate powder till no more powder can be dissolved. Filter the solution, allow it to cool. Do not disturb the solution while it is cooling. Look at the solution after some time. You can see the crystals of copper sulfate. If not, wait for some more time. Now here you can find the solution, or the crystals of the copper sulfate solution from the crystals of copper sulfate from copper sulfate solution. अब ये क्रिस्टल्स कैसे बनाने हैं, उसके लिए सबसे पहले क्या चाहिए, एक पानी चाहिए. पानी के अंदर जो है few drops of dilute sulfuric acid we will add. Then heat the water. When the water starts heating, we will add copper sulfate powder in it and will continuously stir so that copper sulfate gets easily mixed in the, or gets dissolved in the water. And we have to keep on adding the copper sulfate solution till no more copper sulfate gets dissolved in that. That means a saturation point comes where the copper sulfate cannot be dissolved anymore in that liquid. Now what you have to do is continue adding the copper sulfate solution till no more copper sulfate is dissolved in it. After that process is over, then you have to remove it from the fire and then from the heat, and then you have to filter the solution. और उस solution को filter करने के बाद उसको ठंडा होने देना है, और उसको बिल्कुल भी disturb नहीं करना, मतलब उसको बिल्कुल चलाना नहीं है, हिलाना नहीं. कुछ समय तक आप ऐसे ही leave it like that for some time, and when you will after some time you will see that small crystals of copper sulfate solution have started forming. वो जो solution था उसमें से भी copper sulfate crystals बनना शुरू हो गए हैं. Sometimes it may take more time, and sometimes the less time it can also be formed. So you don't have to disturb that solution. You have learned about the physical and chemical changes. Try to identify changes that you observe around you as a physical or the chemical change. So dear children, you must have understood, what you have learned is that in the whole lesson is that there are two types of changes. One is the physical change and other is the chemical change. Now what is the physical change? Physical changes are the changes in the physical properties of the substance, like no new substance is formed in this change, and the changes may be reversible. Reversible का मतलब क्या है कि वो ओरिजिनल जो सब्सटेंस हमने बनाया था वो वापस हमको ओरिजिनल मिल सकता है. That is called as the physical change. And in this, the changes that we get is only the physical change that we get in the substance. No basic component of the substance remains the same, or the basic property of the substance remains the same. If it is paper, it is paper only. If we cut into pieces, what will happen is only the size of the paper is small. If we fold the paper will be remain as it is, because we have not changed the composition from which it is made. We have not changed the chemical formula of the paper. Only the size or the shape of the paper we have changed. So that is called as physical change, and it is reversible, means we can get back the original thing. But a chemical change in new substances formed, and which is not reversible also. Some substances can be obtained by pure state, while others from their solution by the crystallization also. So there are different methods. There are many things in the chemical changes, many ways to find the substance also. उनको crystallization से हो सकता है. जैसे rusting of iron है तो वो जो है वो भी एक टाइप का केमिकल चेंज ही है. जैसे फिर एप्पल के ऊपर कोटिंग हो जाता है, जो ब्राउन कोटिंग होता है, विच इज़ ऑल्सो अ केमिकल चेंज ओनली. So we have learnt about two types of changes, physical and chemical change. Physical change is reversible, chemical change is not reversible. In chemical changes, a new substance is formed, whereas in physical change, no new substance is formed. That you have to keep in mind, the difference between the physical and the chemical changes. So dear children, here the explanation part is over. Now we move on to the workbook part.